Welcome to the glassworking shop. This is the third video in a series where I'm going to be working on a multi-level, multi-component marine assembly. In today's video, I'm going to be combining the components together and make a squeezed triangle shape. A lot of the pieces that I made, a lot of the components that I made were made off camera because the process was essentially repetitive, pretty much the same thing over and over again, and I don't want to be too repetitive. I just want to make videos of different processes, and who knows, maybe someday if somebody wants to see every single step, repetitive or not, I might do that too. This diagram shows the basic idea of how I'm going to put the pieces together. Of course, surprises do occur when working with glass, and I've never done this particular pattern before, so we'll see how it comes out. I'm going to prepare some punties, and for this work, because the final piece is going to be pretty heavy, and I want to be really careful to ensure that it stays under control, and then when it comes time to pull it, I want to have a really nice big moil. So I'm using a 20 millimeter punty rod, and one of the great advantages of the NQALHA is that handwork, it's really inconvenient to spin a 20 millimeter rod. It's more convenient to spin a 12 millimeter or a 10 millimeter. When working with the NQALHA, that limitation is removed, and it's fairly easy to deal with the larger diameter rods. And of course, the larger diameter rods give a lot more stability and a lot more control, and work, especially with a very big moil, work really well for pulling down a piece. And of course, after investing this much time in making the components, I don't want to waste most of my glass in the knuckles. And so I like using a fairly large moil on the end of a fairly large punty. So, getting this guy ready here. I could set up the squeezer and squeeze it into position, but for this application, I think I'm just gonna kind of adjust the end by hand a little bit. Now, before everything is squeezed and before everything is assembled, I'm starting with a round rod, so it won't really be a triangle at first. So I'm going to kind of taper the nose of this guy down, and then later, when it's being assembled and squeezed into a triangle, I'll get it hot and triangularize the moil to get it to match the pattern. But to start off with here, I'm making a kind of a somewhat circular end that just a little bit bigger. Okay. My other moil is already the right size. It's sitting there in the kiln waiting for use, and so it really doesn't need to have any preparation. What I'm going to do now, this is just a 2-layer bullseye with a yellow core and a black outside, and was prepared a while ago. I usually keep a stock of stuff that I've made so that as the inspiration strikes, I can just go grab one without having to make everything from scratch every time. I'm going to be taking this and pulling it down into a reasonably small stringer. The center core that I made in the first video is about 1 inch in diameter. It's about 1 inch diameter cylinder, which will be squeezed in a special set of squeezing dies, and then a variety of different size rods, some approximately 10 millimeters, some approximately 6 millimeter, some just standard color rods that don't have any multiple layers, will all be used. So I'm attempting to pull a somewhat uniform stringer here. That's a technique that I'm still working on. I watch the master stringer pullers pulling a 3-foot long, perfect 3-foot long stringer. Think, wow, that looks really easy, till I try to do it. I think the people that really know how to do it get it right the first time and don't end up trying to fix lumps. But hey, for what I'm doing, for the place that it's going to go in the design, I believe this will be adequate. And I don't think I'm going to need more than that, but I'll go ahead and make up another one. The small marine pieces that I'm pulling down, let me get this off the bench. The small marine pieces that I'm pulling down, I'm not being super careful about preheating because I'm pretty confident they're not going to explode, so I just take them off the bench at room temperature and get right to it. The larger pieces are being preheated in the kiln because pretty much anything over about 7 millimeters or so will just explode if you stick it right in the flame. So maybe I need to take stringer pulling lessons from somebody who's really good at it. Of course, being an inventor, I also think maybe I should invent a stringer pulling machine. Pull to precise dimension, especially for some of those people that do their kind of like pixel-oriented marines out of thousands of stringers. Boy, I bet they would love an automated machine. But hey, too many ideas, not enough time. Got to really carefully choose. Of course, being a machinist and inventor who's also attempting to learn glasswork, it's always the challenge. Do I go out in the machine shop today? Do I go out in the glassworking shop? Do I sit at the computer and work on SolidWorks? this one's a little thicker. I might actually like this one a little bit better. But we'll see as the piece starts to take form. It'll become more and more obvious what the correct piece to use will be. Now, I'm probably going to speed up a bunch of this because a lot of it is going to be pretty repetitive and pretty boring. Now it's time to get out the core. Let me get that punty going. Okay. I'm going to get the end of the punty pretty darn hot here. Make sure I get a decent weld. I'd hate for this thing to fall off during the work. So, I'm going to get the end of this moil pretty hot. Don't want to overheat. I just want to get my marine core barely hot enough to stick, just get it to glow a little. I not want to try to preserve as much of the pattern as I have, but I want the end of that guy to be ripping hot. And there we have it. I'm gonna go over here and take care of some of that kiln dust, and then do a little moil adjustment here. And make sure that the attachment point is good and hot as I prepare okay, got a little bit more on center, and then very gently in the outer flame just start soaking a little heat into it. Even though it came out of the kiln, I want to be pretty careful about how I reheat the thing. And then, while I'm heating, let me get the camera going here on the squeezer. Another nice thing about the NQALHA that I can have the piece sitting there spinning, don't have to really pay attention to it. I can go over and do something else. I could have prepared the squeezer ahead of time, but I wanted to demonstrate the quick disconnect dies and how quick it is to do the setup. This is a very special set of dies. You can probably see, boy, that's an interesting squeeze. Wonder what that's going to look like. This is actually the first time that this squeezer die rig has been used. Now what I'm trying to do here, I'm going to be doing some pretty extreme squeezing on this piece. And want to get the core hot. So first thing I'm doing is just very gently in the far flame, starting to bring it up to temperature, realizing, like my teacher said, glass is an insulator and it takes a really long time, way more time than a beginner realizes. Especially since I have the experience of being a metal worker, and I have my intuition about how heat flows through materials. A lot of it is based on my experience with metal work. And heat moves through metal in a completely different way. I'm gonna cool the outside a little bit on the graphite so I don't overheat the outside as I'm trying to build core heat, build a heat base inside. As I look at the end of the thing, it's black. I got almost no core heat at all in this piece. So slowly and gently. Another nice thing about the NQALHA is that I don't get impatient. It's much easier for me just to stand back, let the machine do the work. Back when I started glasswork and I started doing it by hand, I always got impatient. My hand got tired. I was thinking, hey, is this thing hot yet? Oh, come on, I don't want to spin anymore. Getting a little bit of droop. I think we're getting close here. As I start to see a little bit of droop, I switch over to handwork. I suspect that maybe someday I'll have sufficient hand skill, or sufficient NQALHA skill, I should say, that I'll be able to continue past the droopy stage on the NQALHA. But for now, I'm concentrating, now that it's starting to droop, I don't want to overheat the center. I want to kind of concentrate my heating on the ends because it's real easy to overheat the center of these things. Now, of course, keep in mind that this new set of squeezing dies is experimental. This is actually the first time I've ever tried this configuration. I'm not sure exactly what to expect. So, my biggest question is, Do I go slow and try to get a lot done in the first squeeze? Or do I go fast and try to get a lot done in the first squeeze? Or do I go slow and try to gently get it over multiple squeezes? I'll probably make the decision while I'm doing it, while I'm feeling and observing the first squeeze. So here goes, first squeeze. Oh, I like it. I think I may have discovered some sort of limit here. It seems that even as I get the piece hot, I'm not getting a lot of squeezing action going, and there may be something going on in the glass that's causing it to cool below squeezing temperature before I can get deeper channels, although these channels are pretty much what I want and I shouldn't be complaining. This is pretty close to exactly what I was expecting when I started the process. So there, if you can see it in the camera here, there is my 3-lobe piece. And let me just get the Bunsen going here. Keep it hot on the Bunsen, and I'm going to grab the next pieces for the next step. Of course, once again, I'm demonstrating what's nice about the NQALHA. Can be doing something else. Keep my piece over the Bunsen, keep it hot. Now this guy is one that I made yesterday. I didn't video this because pretty much my standard bullseye marine technique. And I originally thought that it wouldn't need to be resized, but now that I see it, I might end up dicking with it a little bit. It's almost the right size, but this 3-layer murrine is going to go into the grooves I just made. And since I wasn't exactly sure, I mean, I made the dies, the squeezer dies pretty precisely on the CNC, but I wasn't quite sure how the glass was going to react to that, and I wasn't quite sure what size to make this rod. So now that I have a little better idea what's going on, I can size it up to more precisely fit. Okay, so this guy is pretty much preheated. I don't think it's going to explode when I apply torch to it. I'm going to put the NQALHA in position mode and light up the hand torch using the Mirage hand torch with a somewhere between a neutral and an oxidizing flame. And I'm going to attempt to stick this guy into this slot. And like I said, this is a new technique that I'm exploring here. I haven't used this before in my previous designs. So I have limited, very limited experience in trying to do this. And I believe that it is probably tagged well enough go back to rotation mode. Lock off the twist axis. Put my piece back in the outer fire. I'm going to be squeezing this with the fixed size squeezing dies. And remember that what I said, the fixed size squeezing dies require that you use the correct size die. One size does not fit all, and okay, always assume that dies are hot when they have just recently been used for squeezing, even though I suspect they're probably okay, but trying to develop the discipline of just always being careful. Now, my dyes that I'm putting in are known to be cold because they're coming off the rack. So I'm going to select some dyes here that I believe are moderately close to the correct size. Meanwhile, the NQALHA has been happily keeping my piece hot. And I think I'm going to start out here. I still want this piece that I've added to be somewhat round because I'm going to be adding a bunch of other pieces around it. So I don't want to completely squeeze it and flatten it out quite yet, but I do want to give it a bit of a squeeze. Get this guy back in the squeezer. Once again, I don't want to squeeze it completely flat. I just want to make sure that it's nicely tagged and nicely connected so that it doesn't fall out. Okay. So, the next thing I'm going to be doing and I think that's going to be safe for me. Back to positioning mode, and let's move around here. And I'm going to be striping with one of the pieces of murine that I made. And I'm going to cut that end off. I don't really like that end that much. I'm starting with my 10 millimeter piece of 2-layer murine, actually 3-layer murine, and then I'm going to stripe down the side here with a piece of 2-layer, which I kind of sized up into size in the earlier part of the demo. And gadzooks, some of the stuff that I've seen is just astoundingly amazing. And little bit by little bit, as I take lessons and try to figure it out on my own, hopefully I may someday approach some of that nice work that I've seen. But wow, there are some amazing artists out there. So this piece that I'm making is another, I think it's about a 4 or 5 layer, and it's going to form the corner of the triangle, and then when it becomes a hexagon, it's going to form the center of the hexagon. And so hopefully if everything stays nicely aligned, I'll have a really nice pattern as these triangles form together into a hexagon. Of course, that's part of the challenge of this is trying to get the corners to all line up, get the pattern to look good. I'm probably not going to use scissors to cut off the end anymore. I think I'll go back to diamond shears. Okay. So, bit by bit, return to rotation mode, lock off the twist axis, keep the moil hot, so many things to keep under control, and I keep adding things. And I'm doing a 4-camera video shoot. Oh. I suppose I could have taken up stamp collecting, but I always like to try different difficult things. I get bored easily. I don't think I'm going to get bored with glasswork. Okay. Boy, oh boy. Getting ready now to attach the flat piece. I'm trying. Let's see how good I can get this. Trying to tag it on and keep it somewhat parallel. Not perfect, but hey, this is first time I ever attached a flat piece to the side of a triangle. First time ever. And that, let's see if I can get this guy off my bench. The benchtop surface, of course, is fireproof, so don't have to be that horribly careful about keeping the hot glass off it, but okay. The assembly is taking shape. Got my piece a little bit off, but maybe I can adjust it a tiny bit. Right now my focus is just on keeping everything hot. I don't want to get this with all the work I put into this. Certainly don't want the thing cracking or exploding. Okay, you know, let me try this. Okay, try putting Mr. Bunsen on the moil. See if that keeps me out of trouble. So what I'm trying to do here, and I'm not going to have a whole lot of luck, and I think the more I try dicking with this, the worse I'm going to make it, so I'm not going to try very much at all. Oh. And make sure it's in position mode where it's locked in place. It was in rotation mode with the axis configured to be free when it was stopped. So when I applied that little bit of paddle pressure, it didn't hold the piece. If I wanted to stay in rotation mode while doing that, oh, look at that. Boy, I just cleaned it right up. Wrong pedal. I just cleaned it right up. Might as well get that a little more heat into it and just make sure that my flat piece is nicely tagged in place. Okay, so I'm going to be applying a color rod. Get the NQALHA back into position mode for assembly here. I'm going to be applying a color rod, white, North Star Star White. going to probably have to use, yeah, a larger squeezer die. I have a wide variety of these squeezer dies in different sizes. Group back on center. Back on Moil Patrol. Gonna start massaging this thing into a triangle shape, trying to keep the corners right at the corners, which is always the trickiest part. But it looks like I'm in pretty good shape. And just kind of make sure that my corners are staying under control. And then probably one more squeeze, and I'll put on the final, last and final little stringers, and then squeeze it into the final shape. Let it droop down a little bit into position mode. And for the little stringers, I only need a little torch. So that's what I'm going to use. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, tiny bit more fire. The camera that I'm using for the squeezer is my still camera, and it does video, but it doesn't do video really, really well. It's a bit of a pain in the ass to use. Okay. Return to hand heating. observing that it's more or less staying in shape. Actually looking pretty good. Try to massage those corners a little bit. I really, really like the Delta Mag for doing big work like this. I suppose it's possible to do work at this scale with a smaller torch, but my teachers all recommended, hey, if you're going to be doing that kind of stuff, you need a big torch. And we are getting it into a pretty nice triangular shape here. I'm almost thinking that I might want to step up one size in squeezing dies. Either that, or let the piece droop down a little. Okay. Boy, things are getting exciting now. Final operation. I'm gonna switch to handwork here. Make sure that end stays hot. Get my piece nice and hot. And the wide shot camera stopped working. I think the battery died, which is really strange since I put a fresh battery in. It was high capacity, and oh no, more troubleshooting. So I guess you don't get to see the pull, but here's how it came out. Kind of almost straight. Doesn't have to be perfectly uniform because it'll be resized before it's assembled into a hex. So sorry about the problem. Thank you for watching.